Okay, it's time for me to come clean. So today we are going to be talking about series. I'm going to talk about the series that I've read, the series that I have DNF'd, the series that I've started and I'm not going to continue. Did I say the series that I'm in the middle of? Because we're going to talk about that as well and whether or not I'm going to keep reading them. And we'll talk about my favorite series and then maybe we'll figure out what series I should start next. What we're not going to talk about is how many series I actually own, despite the fact that I'm pretty sure I don't like series. So I did do myself the favor and I wrote down the name of some of the series where I did like the first book in the series, maybe even gave 5 stars to the first book in the series, but I'm one and done. Like, I'm good. I'm moving on. I'm definitely not going back to these series. So that would include things like Chaos Walking, which is the knife that never killed, the knife of never ending, something about a knife. That one. I liked the book. It was super fast paced, and I would recommend it. If you are looking for a really fast paced, sort of dystopian vibe, almost Hunger Game chase and on the run scene, like that is a series for you. I literally felt breathless while reading book one, and it was well done. I was just like, oh, okay, that's good. And like, okay, it's going to keep going. I didn't need it to. It could have been done at that. Um, I also have read the first book in the Irish Country Doctor. Also, can't remember the name of this book. You know what? I was wrong. Let's go over to Storygraph and look at these. So I've got the story graph up now for you, so you can actually get the names of the books and the series. So the first book, or really the second one that I've mentioned, is part of the Irish Country series, and I read an Irish Country Doctor. I gave this 4 stars. I really liked it. It was a cozy, nice read, low stakes, funny village type of vibe. I think a good summer read. I know they have some seasonal books like the Christmas one. Almost read that, but I was also like, okay, I get it. It's fine. Like, not much is going to happen. It's cozy. That's the whole vibe. I didn't need to continue. So I didn't. But again, if you're looking for like a cozy historical fiction set in a small village, town people, that kind of thing, you might like this series. Like I said, they do have some seasonal picks, like there is a Christmas book and some other ones. So maybe check that out. I also read Life After Life, which is book one in the Todd family series, and I really liked this book as well, gave it 4 stars. It was a nice blend, I thought, of sort of literary fiction, historical fiction, with some time elements and a little bit of like, I don't know if it would be physics or philosophy. I guess it was more the philosophy of time and like human behavior and relationship to time and that kind of thing. I think it was following the philosophy or idea or concept of Nietzsche, if I recall correctly. Anyway, I really enjoyed the theme throughout the book, but I felt pretty satisfied and complete. I really did feel like this is a book that was part of a series, but truly felt like it could have stood on its own. And I would say the same for an Irish Country Doctor, not so much for the Knife of Never Ending Books. I don't, what is the title of that? I don't know. Anyway, you've seen it. Probably a slightly more controversial one, or at least a very popular one, would be The Poppy War. I read book one of this. I got the idea. I also understood how a lot of people are like, this maybe should have been 2 separate books, both shorter. I totally agree with that opinion. I read book one. I was good. Even though I could see where book two was going, and I was like, ooh, okay, nice. Didn't need to continue. Why? No particular reason, other than like I just really didn't need to read more of that. I know a lot of people read series because they want to just stay with the characters forever. I guess I didn't really want to stay with any of these characters forever or continue. I don't know. I really don't know what it is about these that just aren't drawing me in. Then there was the Illborn Saga. I also gave this book 4 stars, and of the ones that I've mentioned so far, this is probably the one that I even now am still really tempted to continue. Such a fascinating fantasy story. It had a couple of different perspectives, but not so many that it was confusing. Really interesting characters. I enjoyed following each of them. They each had different complications going on in their lives, of course. There was a unique tie in to sort of religion and Also a bit of the feeling of like medieval time period and the Inquisition and that kind of feel, which was all very satisfying and interesting. You only just started to really get an idea of where the magic system could be going and that kind of thing in book one. And so, if there was any book so far out of this group that I would reconsider moving forward with, it would probably be this one. So if you like a good fantasy novel that has a unique magic system and doesn't explain everything in book one and leaves you wanting to understand more, this is probably that book, but still not quite doing it for me. And then two other super popular ones to go through would be Dune and The Wheel of Time. So you have like two of the classics. And, Dune, I'm glad I read it. I feel like now I know what that intro story was. But honestly, I had a lot of buildup going into Dune. I saw the movie first, I read almost all of the graphic novels. I had my husband like explain the movie to me as we watched it. And I feel like I needed all of that. And he loved Dune and he read, I think, the first 6 or 7 books, however many, whatever, all the ones that were written by Frank Herbert. And then he stopped, and even he didn't like all of the series. And I was significantly less invested in even going on to book two. And so I was like, if you're going to tell me that like I could keep reading and the struggle is going to continue to be real and I'm not going to like all of them, I'm out. And as for the Wheel of Time, I jumped on that bandwagon. I think it was last year when a whole bunch of us were reading it at the same time, which is probably the best time for me to have started that one. And it was just okay, to be honest. And I know that some people are like, oh, book 3, 5, 10 are the best ones. I just not that into it. I just didn't need more. I already felt like that first book was way too long and that it was just like the same situation repeated over and over and over again. I think I'm also realizing I'm not a huge fan of like chase scenes where the whole book is someone being chased because you just end up repeating the chase scenes over and over again. Like it's just chase, rest, chase, rest, chase, rest. So yeah, I didn't continue that. And then just this year, I started the Lady Astronaut series, and I don't think it was so much that it was a series that made me not want to continue. It's just the book as a whole, while I thought it was good and really well written, just didn't go in a direction with the science fiction that I wanted it to. I realized it was very, very soft science fiction, and I'm starting to realize I kind of like harder science fiction most of the time. So I think that was partially why that one didn't work for me. And I know that for that book specifically, that's why I didn't continue on with it. Okay, I'm sure there are other series that fall into this category, but I can say that these were all ones where I liked the first book in all of these series and could definitely see why people continue to read them. So that's why I felt like I would at least share these with you in case there's any that you haven't heard of or that you'd be interested in checking out. These are the ones that I would say, yeah, this is worth checking out. Go ahead and do so. But just for me, not being a huge series girl in theory, this is where I left off at them. Book one, every single one. Next, I guess let's talk about the series that I'm in the middle of, and we'll keep going back to Storygraph because since I'm in the middle of them, I don't have book one that I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you the book that I'm on. So the first series I'm going to talk about is the one that I'm currently reading, like literally reading book one right now, and that is Regeneration by Pat Barker. And this I picked up because I happened to stumble across the premise of this written somewhere, and I realized that there were a lot of tie-ins to it with The Return of the Soldier. They both discuss men who are fighting in World War I and are suffering from trauma of their war experience. This book, however, focuses solely on that experience in the setting of a psychiatric hospital. And because my August TBR got me a continuous series on it, I had really high hopes that I would read it. So I decided to go ahead and move on to The Eye in the Door, sort of forcing myself to try book two in the series. I don't know why I decided to do that because that was a decision I made before I even started Regeneration. And I'm really liking Regeneration and I do kind of sort of want to continue with it. I haven't finished it yet though. So I've put a lot of like pressure on myself to go on to book two, so we'll see how that goes. The next series that I'm going to discuss is the Cairo trilogy. This is a book series that I now started back in Gosh, even when was it? I think last summer. No, it was longer than that, I think. Anyway, it's been a hot minute since I read book one in this series. I am now on book two, which is Palace of Desire, and this is a series that I want to continue. The picture that I showed you on on the chirograph, combining the things. The picture that I showed you on Storygraph was actually of the omnibus of the series, which is what I own. And I have convinced myself that the reason that I haven't continued on with book two is because I don't want to continue reading out of that 1,300 page book. And so I did pick up books two and three in the trilogy in their paperback edition. Have I started to read this yet or put it on a TBR? No, but I will. That's the plan. Mhm. Anyway, I did like book one quite a bit. It actually kind of started out rough for me, but then I ended up switching to audiobook for a little bit of that. Really enjoyed the audiobook, I think partially because it helped me with the character names, and ended up really liking the story once I understood what it was about. And so now I want to continue in books two because this series is about a family living in Egypt just before Egypt declares independence. And so it's a really interesting time period that I don't know a lot about. And I really liked the family story that was kind of set in there along, the building tension of the upcoming conflict. So I really want to get back to that series. So I guess maybe I can understand how people want to stay with characters, but maybe this was the first set of characters in a while that I had found myself wanting to stay with. Then again, I have abandoned them. So maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Anyway, let's go on to the next book. So the next book I have, I'm not sure why I still own this, but I took every book off my bookshelf that was part of a series that I was in the middle of, and this is one of them. And that is Wieland and the Memoirs of Carwin the Billoquist. So Wieland is the first book in this bind up that I have, but Memoirs of Carwin the Billoquist is the book that I've read, and it's at the back of the book. Not totally sure why. I think because they put it in chronological order. But Memoirs of Carwin the Billoquist is actually the prequel to Wieland. The reason I'm saying I'm not sure why I still have this on my shelf is because I couldn't stand Memoirs of Carwin the Bilquist. In fact, I think in my mid-year wrap-up video, I said this was my most disappointing book of the year, or the one I liked the least, or my lowest rating. It's all of the above. I did not like Memoirs of Carwin the Bilquist. I don't know why I have this as a book I'm in that's part of a series I'm in the middle of because I don't want to continue reading it. Like I don't want to read the next book because the prequel was so bad. On the other hand, there's a part of me that's like, well, it was the prequel, though it was written last. I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing with that. Maybe I just need to try it and make a decision. That's probably what needs to happen. Okay, the next book is one that I just recently finished, and that is Stalingrad. It is part of the Stalingrad Dilogy. I don't know why it's called that. That was the word that was used in the introduction for it, and so that's what I'm going with. But there are two or three books in this series, depending on who you talk to and who the publisher is and who's writing about it. In the New York Review Books, they talk about it in both ways and they publish all three books. So I don't totally understand that. You can see on the story graph that this book is listed as book number one in the series. However, if you go to New York Review Books and you read some of their other things, or if you go on to Goodreads, you will see that Stalingrad is listed as book two. Either way, what you should know about this series of books is that there are three books that are all sort of connected together, though the stories are not necessarily related. And those books I'll show you here. And those books include Stalingrad and Life and Fate, which the Storygraph lists as book one and two. I have Life and Fate right here because these are the two books that actually feature the same characters. It follows the same family, and book two, Life and Fate, picks up exactly where Stalingrad leaves off. The other book that sometimes gets thrown in with this as being, and then gets it called a trilogy, would be The People Immortal, but that is a book that Vasily Grossman also wrote about the same time period, which is World War II. But in The People Immortal, when it's listed as being part of this trilogy, The People Immortal is the first book because it starts at the start of World War II, I believe, whereas Stalingrad picks up in the war towards the end as the Axis is about to go into Russia with the intention of conquering it. And then, like I said, Life and Fate picks up after that. So if you wanted to read them in order and in chronological order of the war, that's the order you would read it in. I happened to get a copy of Stalingrad, so I read that first, and my intention is to go on to Life and Fate. And then at some point, because there is no similarity in plot line between the books, I'll eventually read The People Immortal. But I did really like Stalingrad, so I do intend on continuing on with the series. This is the reason I haven't continued on yet. They're chunky books. Stalingrad was 1,088 pages long. Life and Fate is 800 pages long. But I can say Stalingrad was so good, I almost immediately picked up the next book. But I'm going to give myself some space. Another trilogy that I have going on is Ice Trilogy. I can say this. I do know that if a series is just 2 or 3 books, I'm a lot more likely to continue. Ice Trilogy. Okay. This was a weird one. I read book 1, which is called Bro, and that was probably one of the strangest things I've read in a long time. At this point, is it still the strangest thing? I don't know. I've read some weird books this year, but that was definitely the weirdest book I had read up to that point. And it was so strange and unresolved at the end that I do kind of need to read book 2 in hopes that it will get less weird. Is that really what's going to happen? No, I have no expectations that the second book in here is going to get less weird. I'm just hoping that the author's intent becomes clearer in book 2. That's why I'm continuing this one, because the Ice Trilogy is about this chunk of basically ice that lands on Earth in Siberia that a whole bunch of people go on an expedition to find. Most of them end up dead, except for one guy who then has the ice speak to him, and it transforms him kind of sort of, and he is now on a mission to go and find the other blue-eyed blonde-haired people that are like him, to bring them all together so that they can leave the earth and then destroy it. And that's just part of it. This is also that they can get rid of like the immorality that's going on and the never-ending violence. Though clearly there's some violence involved in what they're doing. It's an odd start to a series for sure. And the way they end up going about converting people, also very strange. And maybe you can see why I'm like, I need to continue on in book 2 because I need to understand what the message is. Because whatever the message and point of this book is not clear in book 1. And I need clarity. I have another trilogy that is the New York trilogy. This is a trilogy that I started as part of a local book club. They just started with book 1, which is, what was book run? City of Glass. And this was also another strange read, but I think technically I read it at the end of last year. And I have read another work by Paul Auster since reading the book in here. I read 4321, I think the beginning of this year, and really liked that book because at first I thought I was going to be one and done after reading City of Glass in here. But after having read more of Paul Auster's work, I realized I do like him as an author. I did have someone leave a comment and let me know that this trilogy isn't necessarily indicative of some of his other work, and it's a bit more experimental and bizarre. And so now knowing that, I do know that I like his writing style, and I guess I'm maybe a bit more prepared to go into the second book in here, which is Ghost. I don't know. Am I prepared for that? I'm at least going to try it. So this is one that I guess I'm still going with. It seems like this is a pile of like maybes. Give it a try. I don't know what's going on here. I'm also in the middle of the Chronicles of Barsetshire, and I always get the name of this series incorrect, but this is a series that's pretty large, and I'll just scroll on the side of me or whatever what the other books are in here. I've read The Warden so far and Barchester Towers. I have Dr. Thorne. I have Framley Parsonage, The Small House at Arlington, and The Last Chronicle of Barset. So I own all 6 books in this series, despite the fact that they've all been 3 stars or less for me so far. I found them just okay. I liked The Warden the best, which I thought was a good sign because a lot of people like The Warden the least. But I feel like because I already own them, I should continue on with book 3, which is Dr. Thorne. And hey, this makes the first book on this list that I've made it to book 3. So I feel like that alone is an accomplishment. Is it going to be reason enough for me to read this and finish it? That's a whole nother question because, like I said, I haven't really liked the series so far. Though I have heard that people who like the series, this is their least favorite book in the series. And then it seems like people who don't really like the series, this is their favorite book. So, all the more reason for me to read it. And also, I get, self bragging rights like I made it to book 3. Another series that I'm making okay progress in would be Xenogenesis by Octavia E. Butler. I've already read Dawn. That was a 5-star read for me, and it's also not a super long series. There's just 3 books in it. I am on book 2, of course, which is Adulthood Rights. And yeah, this is one that I'm actually really excited about. I really enjoyed book 1. I've pretty much enjoyed everything Octavia E. Butler writes, even when it gets kind of weird. I like the themes in her books and the topics that get discussed. I like the way she explores things, includes sci-fi in there. And she does write kind of soft sci-fi in terms of like things are very rarely explained, like how any of it's working. But I like that as well because it feels realistic the way she does it. I don't feel like she's ignoring the science fiction that is in there. I feel like it's usually you're from the person who has less sci-fi info or like it's not important in terms of like their day-to-day living, like they've accepted that as part of their life or they're not understanding how it's part of their life either. I don't know. Anyway, I like her soft sci-fi. What can I say? So adulthood rights, I am looking forward to getting into this as soon as I can on my TBR, and I might just pick it up even if I don't get it on a TBR. Okay, let's wrap this up here. So what have we discovered? I do read series, apparently a decent number of them. I DNF quite a few books that are part of series or completely DNF series and just decide not to continue reading them. And then there's some that I just let book 2 linger on my shelf for forever, especially if it's in a bind up, I've noticed. So I did figure that out at one point and I stopped buying bind ups of videos. I mean, of videos. I stopped buying bind ups of series because I was noticing that I really don't read them. So I have these 3. These are the ones that I am most excited about getting back to. Life and Fate, Adulthood Rights, The Eye in the Door, which is part of the Regeneration series, as well as I am looking forward to finishing the last book in the Dune graphic novels and The Burnt Empire. I could say of these 5, I feel like I'm for sure going to continue the series. In terms of all of these, I feel like um, for Life and Fate and Adulthood Rights, the Lilith Brood, I feel like those 2, as well as Dune, I'm definitely going to finish the series. I think I'll finish this series for Regeneration because there's only one more book in it after that. And then for Burnt Empire, I'm pretty sure I'll finish the series. That's also a trilogy. And I think that has part to do with it is that if it's just a duology or a trilogy, and I've liked the first book and I have a reason to read the second book, I'm more likely to just go ahead and finish the whole trilogy. I have 3 books that are part of series that I don't think I'm going to finish. I'll try a chapter of each of these or read 10% and then make a decision. But if I don't like the next book I read in these series, I'm DNFing the whole series. There's that. Bro is the one book that I'm just, going to continue and I'm pretty sure that I will finish. And then these top 3 and the other 2 that I don't own yet are the ones that I think I'm most likely going to finish and enjoy and read the whole series of. So that's it. That's my whole discussion. What have I learned? I don't know. I think, like before, the thing that I have figured out the most is that I should only buy one book in a series at a time. I need to skip omnibuses and that kind of thing. And that if I don't like the first book, I probably should just move on. But I don't know that for sure yet. I feel like I need to try more book 2s to see if that holds up and is true. So I am going to be focusing as I create piles of possibilities and TBRs and that kind of thing over the next couple of months. I am going to be focusing on trying to make sure that I am getting a decent amount of book 2s and continuing series so that I can finally decide, like, is it worth it? Like, if I didn't like book 1, is it worth trying the second book? Because I think that's the next thing that I need to figure out beyond only buy book 1 and then decide after that. I think I'm now at the point of, is it worth moving on to book two? Even if I didn't like book one, I have the feeling the answer is going to be no. But I guess we'll find out together. Let me know. Do you like series? Do you read a lot of them? Like, how does that work? Are there any here that you feel like I should continue? I don't know. Anyway, that's it for today, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.